Welcome to the Echo Essentials podcast. My name is Chris Pekarski, and on today's episode, we have in from City Council, we have the chair of DSAB, which is the District of Nipissing Social Services Administration Board, Mark King in. It was great to have Mark in. We had him in to talk a bit about, as you probably have seen, our local media circuit in various different platforms and channels. The reportings and data around homelessness and the unhoused in Northern Ontario, specifically related to a report that came out from NOSDA, which we'll get into, and obviously Mark's trip to a conference for the Rural Ontario Municipality Association, also known as ROMA. Lots to go in through here. It was a good conversation. It was nice to have Mark kind of share some insights. We talked a bit about, what can be done at the provincial level, what he wants to see done at the federal level, what he doesn't want to see done at the municipality level, and all things that kind of come with, looking at tackling a very complex issue and all the hands that make the work lighter. So it's a great conversation. We encourage you to give it the full listen, as always. Before we get to all that, though, I want to throw it and thank our title sponsor of today's show, Source for Sports.
It's almost that time of year. Early mornings at the rink, fresh notebooks and backpacks, and a community gearing up for another great season of varsity sports. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of it all. Whether it's finding your kid's first pair of skates, gearing up for tryouts, or outfitting your team for the season ahead, we've got you covered. Because here, we're not just a sports store, we're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to cheer you on every shift, step, and stride of the way. Visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street and let us help you along your way.
On today's episode, we have in from City Council, the chair of DSAB, Mark King. Mark, how are you today?
I'm well.
Excellent. So it's good to have you in. It's been a little while since we've had you in, as we established before. I think we had you in for an election coverage thing or whatever. But this time, we're going to talk about one thing in particular, but a couple things. Rock is going to pigeonhole to talk about one thing. But obviously, being the chair of DSAB, we had a report come out recently from, I'm going to get this right, the NOSDA in a joint collaboration with AMO and OMSA regarding the increase in homelessness in Ontario, specifically related to the North. So before we get into all that, tell us a little bit about where you were recently, because that's going to filter into that. You just came back from ROMA, right?
That's correct, yes.
So ROMA is the Rural Ontario Municipality Association. It was a conference. This is in Toronto?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me a bit about that. What's that about?
Well, it's probably a bit of a head rush, I'll be honest with you.
That's okay. We got time.
Tremendous amount of work is done there. It takes a lot of effort on the part of DSAB actually to make everything work from a timing standpoint. Mm-hmm. An interesting process, and I've been through it a number of times over the years. I enjoy it's a challenge, because really what you're there for is to try to explain to senior levels of government the problems you're facing at the municipal level. So that's the way I try to explain the process. It's a very, very good exercise. I think over the years, and I felt this way early on as a councillor, that we didn't do enough lobbying for our own region, and that we needed to do more of that. That's why I do it. So, yeah.
So I'm guessing things like this ROMA conference in Toronto, which, for the record, just for the trimmings, is featuring predominantly, if not exclusively, municipalities in Ontario, but the provincial government, right? It's not federal.
Correct.
Right?
No, it's not federal.
Exactly. Okay.
Good point.
Yes.
Very good point.
I know people do talk a bit about, where the buck stops and how the buck gets split. And we can get into all of that from a perspective as a councillor, as a member of local politics for the last 18 years. But let's talk about the whole lobbying part, because you mentioned in an article not long ago about how, maybe we need to do more to lobby for funding at, the government levels that can provide it. Because you think it might go to higher populated areas or bigger areas like Southern Ontario compared to Northern Ontario. How do conferences like the ROMA conference allow yourself or members of our own local, group to kind of lobby and advocate for that funding to our leaders at the provincial level?
So complicated question,
Yeah.
no question about that. My position as a city councillor, I've sat through delegations with the city and different provincial ministers, and then at the same time have done delegations on behalf of DSAB, which is the local social service board. But I think, just to give you a little bit of context,
Sure.
I'm vice chair of NOSDA. So that is the Northern Ontario Service Delivery Association.
Oh, you're the vice chair of that.
I'm vice chair of that
They
organization.
put out the report, right?
Pardon?
They put out the report, right, that I was referring to earlier?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, keep going. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was what I was going to try and allude to.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the ability of Northern Ontario to actually get its story across to the provincial government, there was never any doubt in my mind that it's difficult to lobby if you're not big enough. And the advantage of being involved with NOSDA provides the opportunity, and I'm a voice for Northern Ontario when I go there. And that actually stretches right from the Manitoba border to the Quebec border to south of Parry Sound. So it's a very large geographical area. The organization itself, NOSDA, is made up of all of the service delivery managers right across that complete region. So when we go to speak to ministers, they listen. And that, in my mind, is most important to get their attention, because what we're watching now, I believe, is a thrust by the provincial government to actually understand the value of Northern Ontario and what it actually means to the provincial economy. And just to go a little bit further with that, in that report, in the context in the report, it talked about the actual GDP that's created in Northern Ontario, and that number is $36.4 billion to the provincial economy. So there's substantial process that's going on in there.
Putting it
Huge,
lightly.
absolutely huge. So the importance of being able to speak to that issue and, trying to get ministers to understand, and I've said this directly to them, Northern Ontario is the engine of Ontario. And given the problems that are faced, with respect to the ongoing tariffs and whatnot, possibly the loss of the auto industry, and the need to develop resources, the importance of Northern Ontario, I believe at this point has really ratcheted up. And we watch Vic all over the world trying to promote business and make that happen, which is good. But the reality is these natural resources that are sitting in Northern Ontario need to be developed for the betterment of the province and the people that live here. So that's a little bit of context around what transpires there and how you try to get the ear of the minister. But the importance of that homeless study, and I know you're going to ask me this question, because it's the second year that we've actually produced that at NOSDA. And the first year, it was produced directly ahead of Roma. The Minister of Housing at that time was Minister Calandra. And I had the pleasure of spending some time and speaking with him, along with the mayor of Timmins, to talk about homelessness and what that really meant. During that particular meeting, he basically took the wind right out of our sails. I'll be quite honest with you about that. And it was almost like a gut punch because he basically indicated that the figures that we were providing to the ministry were somehow skewed. In other words, he was suggesting the homeless issue wasn't as bad as it was made out to be in the actual report that was provided to the province. So that was a real sore point. From a managerial standpoint inside NOSDA, we went back and basically tried to recover from what happened during that event because we felt we had a solid story to tell about the needs of Northern Ontario.
I remember the report.
Yeah, huge. Getting back to the report this year, it talks about, 117% increase in the homeless situation in Northern Ontario. That report, I did the presentation to the Assistant Minister of Housing. His name is Minister Smith. He's the past mayor of Gravenhurst, and I find him actually receptive.
Okay.
And quite interested in what we had to say. And there's an overall feeling I got through this, actually most of the meetings. I think many of the associate ministers and ministers inside the province really are scrambling to figure out how they deal with the problem that's been presented at the provincial level. And that's just a gut feeling I had when I was there. Yeah. Minister Smith was very cordial, listened to us, did not try to, intimidate or anything like that. I had the feeling that he honestly understood what we were saying to him. The end result in that meeting was that we will have another meeting within a month. So that's why I said to you, the feeling I had was that at the provincial level, the ministers are struggling with probably the dynamics of the economy and how the tariffs are impacting the auto industry. And that's why it was so important to indicate to them that really, in my mind, Northern Ontario is the avenue to help generate revenue for the province.
Fair point.
So they've got to recognize the inherent problems that have over probably, I would say, probably a 7 or 8 year period. And they've grown year after year after year. And I've watched them grow. And, when I relate that back to my position at DSAB, quite frankly, what we're doing at this point is we're managing the problem.
At the local level, you mean?
At the local level, we're managing it.
Okay.
We're trying to manage it.
Right.
Very, very difficult because there are so many pressures involved in the middle of it. Just this morning, I probably spent the majority of my day trying to figure out how we're going to scale up because of the inclement weather and the low temperatures. And I know for a fact there's probably 20 individuals in this area that are living rough. Making sure that there's enough room for people that want to use the shelter in this inclement weather. And that's what I call managing, in my view. Working with a number of city councillors today, Lana Mitchell, the deputy mayor, Maggie Horsfield, and they have concerns, and you try to answer those concerns because they are board members, and certainly trying to make sure that we've covered all our bases and not created a situation where it could get out of control. But the reality, with respect to my position on DSAB, certainly, creates a problem trying to manage it, because you're dealing with the public on one side, and then at the same circumstance, you're dealing with the provincial government. So we are really a flow-through agency, but we have the ability to levy. And a certain percentage of our levy actually goes back to the municipalities. And the board is made up of representation from right around the region, right from West Nipissing through to Mattawa to Temagami is on our board. South Algonquin, which is the bottom end of Algonquin Park, they're on our board. So we have to answer to a large board. And at the same time, we have a large city, the city of North Bay, in the middle of that organization. So the problem that exists is that you have to meet the needs of the board or the members or the municipalities outside the city. But at the same time, you have to recognize the problems that are inherent inside the city of North Bay.
Right. So it's interesting. You bring up a really unique kind of balancing or juggling act, right? Where you have through a levy of your position, being a member of DSAB, being the chair of DSAB, obviously being the vice chair of NASDA. Talk about meeting community members where they are, and meeting people here who are experiencing it. Obviously our MPP is Vic Fideli, who we've talked about inviting on the show before, and I'm sure he'll say yes at some point. Do you find when you have these conversations and conferences like this, or working relationships or professional relationships with people like Vic or Vic himself, that these conversations are happening? Like, how can we get? Essentially, what I'm asking is, I'll get to the root of it. How do we get outside of these conferences, if they are effective or not, members of Queen's Park to see that this is impacting people in the north? Like, how do you do that? Because you'd think the report would be a good strategy, but if you're potentially getting gut punched a year ago.
Well, we did a year ago, but the reality of this situation is it's repeated itself again. And the release of the report was timed, right?
Yeah, of course.
We had the basis of an understanding so that we could say to the province, this is the situation. But I'll tell you something else, and you brought this up earlier on. Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate part is that I don't feel we do a good enough job at the federal level. And why I say that is that through my discussion with Graydon Smith about the housing envelope.
Who's the MP of Parry Sound? Is that correct?
Yeah.
No, Graydon Smith is.
He's the assistant minister of housing.
Yes. Or is he Sudbury? I mean, this one of those mixed up.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry.
It's hard to keep track of
too
it
many,
all.
honestly.
There's a lot going on there. But in that presentation from NASDA, following the housing plan, we said to them, we need 2,000 units to be built in Northern Ontario. We need 50% grant from the province in order to make that happen. So that's our ask.
Okay.
The balance, the other 50%, would be raised through normal financing. And my experience over the years at DSAB, whenever we made application for housing generating money, I can tell you that the majority of the time we were shut out.
Why?
Good question. Because Toronto, Ottawa, and all those bigger communities
Population centers.
Got the money.
Really?
Got the money. There's only one funding initiative that I can remember that went to Thunder Bay, and everyone in Northern Ontario looked at that and said, why? So the rationale behind what we tried to do this time around was we've put all the DSABs together under one envelope of NOSDA and said, we have a project where we can build 2,000 units in Northern Ontario with the proper financing, and we can facilitate that through NOSDA directly to the DSABs throughout Northern Ontario. And that process is actually, it's a legal entity right now.
Okay.
This has been going on for probably a year and a half because we recognized that we couldn't compete with the large centers in Southern Ontario for the housing money. Simple. You know, the mayor of Toronto gets on global news and whines, and the premier answers her. You know, that's the way it works down there. And
helps when you're down the street.
Pardon?
Helps when you're down the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyways, I mean, that's what we tried this time around to try and find a lever. But will we see something? Having said that, and I'm going by a gut feeling when I talk to the associate minister, there seems to be a disconnect between the federal and provincial government because I asked them, you know, how is the funding going to flow? Because we've heard about Build Canada for literally 6 months to a year, and he couldn't give me that answer. So it appears to me they're still trying to figure out how to move the money. I asked them today, are we going to see the money from the province, or is the federal government going to send the money to us? How is it going to work? So that's kind of the long story around a long, tedious task to try and move the situation forward.
Right, which feels like a very complex way of answering something that is infinitely more complex than the question. Right? Is that at what point? And again, like I'm not a political science person. I'm a guy with a mic, but I'm kind of keen to see what the I don't even know, like the measurable breakdown of what would have to come from the three levels of government, so to speak. What would come from federal, provincial, and how much is it coming from the municipal side of things, in terms of like, because I mean, looking back on, the study and looking at what what Phenom was talking about, there's a lot of different factors that can kind of contribute to homelessness or being unhoused across the province, but in Northern Ontario especially, they talk about addiction and mental health issues and the lack of growth in housing, not just across the province, but across Canada, and how that hasn't been as fast, what that looks like. And I feel like all these different factors, which have, again, different, no pun intended, places that they call home at the political level, that if all the lights aren't on, it's kind of hard to kind of get the green light to go. And so, if one part's doing a lot and one part isn't doing anything and it changes, like how does that impact how you can do things with what you can do at the local level? Like, I'd imagine it's hard to read the room when things can change, at the provincial level, and whether it's ministers or not, or the bigger picture, and how that filters down from the federal level. Like, I mean, at this point, what would you think would be an appropriate? Maybe this is a loaded question, Mark. I'm going to throw it at you. What do you think is an appropriate percentage or breakdown that you think? Not the number specifically in terms of like the dollar number, but the percentage breakdown to help people in North Bay solve this problem. What would we need from all three levels of government?
So first of all, I'm going to suggest to you.
Sure.
Number one, the municipality should not be in this business. I just went through the final process at budget last night.
Yeah.
And, we ended up at 3.95% increase.
Yeah.
It's fine if you're retired, you own your home, and you have 5 different pensions coming in. What happens if you're a 25-year-old, married with children, trying to put food on the table? How does that work? It doesn't. Yeah. That's the problem, and it's actually accelerated. While I've been on council, watching it happen, and I think over a period of time, from a municipal standpoint, we've expected too much of property taxpayers. I really believe that. We have to provide a service. There's no question. We have to make sure the water is safe. It works. Those important parts, protection, fire, police, all those different things.
Infrastructure stuff.
Are really important things, and I don't balk at those expenditures. But when we try to be something we shouldn't be, trying to answer all these questions from the public, and the public right now, they're placing pressure on certain councillors. They expect the city to actually fix the housing problem. Well, I've got a message for those people. It's not going to happen because the money is not there. And it puts tremendous pressure on the internal system of the city trying to maintain service. And, you've got to be able to do that. So it's not part of the mandate of the city to provide that or to try and make it work.
Right.
That's why I see, my position at DSAB as being very, very important, because we're actually the flow-through agency for both federal and provincial money. And we allocate those out
For what?
wherever it's needed. So if we don't feel there's enough money there and the public don't see the results of it, we've got a problem.
Fair point.
Yep.
I mean, like you kind of, maybe outline. I'm going to crudely kind of attempt to summarize. I imagine the city of North Bay, they don't want to become landlords, which is not like, I guess, like the solution of the problem here. Like that's not what they want to do. But I guess, through DSAB, there are some income controlled or below cost housing that's provided. So I guess when people see stuff like that, they either say, okay, well, maybe we want more. That's a thing that's offered through DSAB at the municipal level. Why aren't we funding more of those things? But then is it a funding issue? Is it something else? Is it a tax raise issue? Because, if we're funding more of these things, is it going to maybe impose a higher, I guess, like weight on, the members of our community? Like, how does that, is that the dynamic that you're kind of talking about?
Well, and that was part of our, our presentation DSAB made to the Associate Minister of Housing.
Yeah.
We provided him 7 shovel-ready projects that are ready to go in this region tomorrow.
Okay.
Tomorrow.
And?
You need the money to make this happen, right?
Yeah.
And, the other part of this, and I was on the floor during the last conference, and it might be 2 or 3 years ago, and I happened to be sitting there watching the Premier talk about their housing policy. It might have been 3 years ago. And I was with the CAO of the day, and we were watching it. Normally we go to the bear pit, but it was full. We couldn't get in to listen. And he started to, indicate that the government was going to build all these homes. And I thought,
saying that for a while.
The issue is?
What's that?
The issue? Government does not build homes. They don't. Developers, people that know how to do it, build homes.
Right.
And the issue that we face in the housing industry right now is that it's not profitable. That's why nothing's getting built. The housing industry, the way I see it in Southern Ontario, is basically tanked. It's in trouble.
Well, it's a buyer's market generally across the board.
Yeah.
And I know rent in the city of Toronto, which is a very unique example, is lowering because there's property with no one to fill it, and prices are too high for people to go into them.
Yeah.
So they're grouping together. But I don't know. Maybe I'm skeptical, Mark, in the fact that I can't believe there wouldn't be any kind of, I say benefit. I know you said like avenue or profit opportunity for developers to build when like it's a long-term game, I imagine, in terms of being developers and property owners and just selling that into being some sort of operable state. Like, it's not going to be a get-rich-quick kind of opportunity. It's going to be something that you have to invest in. That's why developers invest in the area. Is there a change in that conversation? Because I think that is the solution, because you can't depend solely on, you definitely can't depend solely on the municipal level to fund this to being a solution, but how can you incentivize developers to build more here?
So good question. And that's the reality of, social housing. It could be geared to income housing. So the first part of the question is the capital money to make the build work. In many cases, the developer can find that cash to make it happen. The issue is the long-term cost of operation. If you're stretched out 35 years, what does that look like? And how much rent do you have to charge over that period of time to carry the building? But there's got to be some profit built into it. No question about it.
Also won't happen, I understand.
So the answer to this, and that's what's taken place up at Cartier Street, and we have 60 units that will probably be completed in August of this year.
Okay.
And that was the housing accelerator money that came from the federal government to the city of North Bay. In turn, the city of North Bay transferred funds to DSAB in order for us to subsidize the rent over the long term of that build, to make it practical for the individual to actually build.
Okay.
That's the way it works.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I guess I guess the answer is, why not more? Why shouldn't there be more? Why can't there be more? Funding, money, people saying yes. Is that the impression I'm getting from you?
You're absolutely right. I'll say it right out. We need the federal government to come to the table. I sense that's the issue. If they want to build housing, they've got to come to the table and either help these regions, with the cash up front, or give it to the province and turn it over to these organizations that are structured in the right way to make it work. Because the way they're operating right now, it's a failure. It's a total failure. And until that happens, I really, I've got serious concerns about what I'm watching.
Fair point. I guess it's hard because, I don't think that anyone wants the government to be inherently, at definition, to be like land property owners of being a landlord, but we want them to help contribute towards, being part of the solution in terms of building more affordable housing or income scaling housing, I guess. But I guess if you're suggesting, and I'm giving you an opportunity here, if you're suggesting that development and housing that be given back to the municipality comes from the federal government, what has to come from the provincial government to help make this issue lighter? How can they become part of the solution, if they can be? And I asked that question, Mark. Sorry. I asked that question because you just had a conference with provincial members. And obviously, they're invested in seeing, how they communicate with the municipalities. They have a hand to play in here, right?
Oh, absolutely. No question. There's actually a couple avenues when I think about it. And, in my mind, certainly the provincial government has a hand in trying to help finance the overall build proposition, whatever that looks like. That's without question. Mm-hmm. The other issue that and the Minister of Housing, I listened to him talk about red tape and the issues surrounding building permits. And he promised a 30-day review of how those things actually take place. And, sit on council, and I sit in committee and planning committee, and we go through this maze of issues around a simple build. Some people may not like it, and they don't want it in their backyard. And this is playing out in our community. We need to streamline the system. We need to make sure it's easy to build. We need to incentivize business people that know how to do it to get them to actually come to the table and build, because no one else is going to do it. But, we did have a meeting with the minister responsible for red tape removal, and that was fruitful. And it kind of switched in another direction, but it just made me think about childcare, and that issue in this region is actually quite a problem. We're going to end up sending back about $6 million in funding money from the province because we don't have enough people to staff daycare centers. We have literally 1,400 kids sitting on the waiting list, preschoolers, and we don't have the people to staff it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I'm talking on my butt here. I could have swore I saw an article recently about there being a push or a change regarding funding for tuition for early childhood educators.
Yeah,
did I not correctly see that?
Yeah,
is
you
that related?
Probably did. You probably did, and that was part of the presentation we made from a DSAB standpoint was the Learn and Stay program, which was highly successful. That we used that with our EMS, and in conjunction with Canada College, and I know Vic has been talking about that over the last while. So that was the presentation we made to the Minister of Universities and Colleges, indicating to him, we think this is an avenue to kind of fix that problem that we have in the region. And we're not alone here. That's going on right across Northern Ontario. And if you put that picture together and you've got a shortage of people to work in our economy, and right now most families, the spouse both work. They both work right now. That's the way the world. That's the way the world is.
Yeah.
But if it's not practical for one of the individuals not to work, because number one, it's maybe too expensive or highly inconvenient, they're not going to work. So they're going to sit at home and, look after their children, and on we go. But when you've got that problem with preschool situation where you can't rectify the shortage and you can't give people that opportunity, if you're looking to turn the big picture economy up, you've got a big problem.
Yeah.
Big problem.
I mean, it feels like a shame that we have to turn that money back because there isn't enough workers to sustain the potential, wait list, so to speak.
Yeah.
Is there any other issues regarding, because we're on this topic, I know it's not quite related, but it's kind of related. What else can we do in that front? Because that seems like, talk about social services, provincial level. What other things can, be introduced to help, whether it's getting more people in the field, like helping out with the Learn and Stay grant, or giving more opportunities to have more business for this to happen. Because it's difficult. I'll speak for myself. My partner and I, we don't have any kind of kids at home right now. We're both working, and it's hard. And things are not the same affordability as they were 30 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. And so, you kind of have to, both go to work and both clock in the time and try to pay for groceries, and that's expensive. And so there's so many different factors. It's like there has to be other ways in which we can help people in their pockets to kind of help make things easier. whether you have a roof over your head or not. Obviously, it would make it easier to have money to go, find some sort of affordable housing. But there's so many things that make life unaffordable or difficult to afford, right? So I don't know. I mean, I'm all down for talking and pleading to all members of government to see like how we can solve this problem, because we're in it together, right? Ultimately, we should take care of each other in some capacity. But I'm kind of keen. Actually, I have a question for you here, Mark. It's kind of related to this. So what kind of supports do you think the city of North Bay would need or need to build to kind of help support and address, the getting back to the unhoused or the homelessness issue here at the local level that we don't have yet, or that we can build upon and upgrade currently?
Well, first of all, I think we do an excellent job at Northern Pines. And that was a lot of hard work to get that in place over the years. And coming in here tonight, I was thinking about the cold weather program and what kind of a fix we would be in as a city right now if we didn't have that.
On a day like today, especially this weekend, you seen the temperature? It's nuts.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So, and I want to make that point. And the other thing I think, I need to make is that we have a tremendous relationship with the operating agency, which is the Crisis Center, do just a tremendous job. And they pulled it out of the fire today with respect to the ability to meet the needs in that facility. I don't believe that the city of North Bay should be in that business. I believe it's the responsibility of the local DSAB to be in the business. We are responsible for that group of people, if you want to put it that way. How do we get to that point? And I said this last night during the budget meeting at council, there's $3 million sitting in the capital budget that is earmarked for a second basic, it's called a hub, but really it's a shelter. I was prepared and did support it at the time that this discussion was going on, but the city of North Bay didn't receive the provincial funding. And there's another little issue. There's a $1.5 million operating cost in the middle of that operation. So I don't see property taxpayers making that happen. It has to come from the province. And this discussion actually was going on today. I had it literally this afternoon with the mayor. Do tell. And the CAO. And Timmins did not get a hub either. They didn't get funding for that. Sault Ste. Marie got 2. So we're trying to figure out, what the fairness is here in the whole process.
Is that related to like developmental history? Because, they had maybe none before, or a lack of per population?
No. These hubs are all new. It's a new thought process on how to solve the homeless problem. But my efforts really are around trying to make sure we have enough social housing. That's the answer to this problem.
Yeah.
Because right now, the way Northern Pines is structured, we have, somebody comes in off the street. They go through the system. They end up in supportive transitional housing. Somebody is there 24/7. Make sure that person is able to exist on their own. Once it's been determined that that person can move forward, then they go to the next step, which is non-supportive transitional housing at Northern Pines. But this is where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there?
I guess it depends on the person, but...
Yeah. If you're on OW, Ontario Works, you're making $700 or $800 a month.
That's not enough for a one-bedroom apartment.
That's
It's
the
not.
issue.
It's not.
So the issue boils down to, the Northern Pines was designed to make that rotate, to actually move people through the support systems and get them back into the community where they can function.
Okay.
But this the affordability situation has actually blown that rate out of the water because it's unaffordable.
Okay, so let's continue that. So whether it's social services related or anything related to the housing side of things, how can the city of North Bay, if that's even possible, to what extent, make affordability easier for those who are here? Is there anything that we can do, or is that all based on business and provincial government or federal government? How can people look to the council or whomever, the decision makers, and say, like, how can you help us here? Like, what can you do within your capacities to help those who are unhoused? Or make it more affordable?
Well, I mean, that could have been done at the budget table last night quite easily. We had an option of 2.92%. It was the use of reserves, 1.75 million in reserves that could have actually brought down the tax rate, which would have made life a little more affordable. That was only one method. We ended up at 3.95. It's basically 1% above that. That's an affordability issue, and my comments to council was that we are actually inflationary, right? Because we're above the designed requirements of the Bank of Canada. They're trying to hold inflation at 2%, but yet we've driven the cost up here in the city because of our tax increases. And I need to be careful with that. I did support the budget. I supported it because we need kind of a cohesive process at the council table, and that's not always easy to get to. But that's kind of my background. I try to make it work the best I can, and I've learned over the years that you can't fight everything. What's
the phrase? Pick your battles?
Yeah. So the affordability issue, and this is where it gets tricky.
Yeah.
How does a city councillor make it affordable for people?
I guess
and I'm asking you the question,
yeah,
right?
I mean, I'm out of my depth because I'm not a city councillor and I have no present intention of running. I'll make that very clear, but I'm happy to talk about it because I'm here as a longtime North Bayite. I don't know. I guess like incentivizing ways in which they can go outside of their current capacity and funding models to help those can kind of pick up the slack. Whether that's, again, we talked about developers earlier, trying to attract or incentivize people who want to develop in the North. Because we talk about all this money in the North. Okay, well, let's get people to spend some money back up in the North. Like, how can we help facilitate the flow of industry aside from just being pigeonholed in a couple different areas in the North at large? Because there's a lots going on in the city of North Bay. People like to think it's a town, has a town vibe, but it is a city. There's stuff going on. How can we continue to grow as a city and add more things and add more tools to the city toolkit to make not just the city more dynamic, but more affordable in different ways? So whether it's it's maybe not a great example per se, but, talking about competition, I'm sure it had a very interesting, impact on, and maybe this is going back to your time on council before, when, North Bay was wrestling with the idea of ride sharing. That's a very different kind of conversation. But I mean,
that's a while ago now.
I'm taking you way back.
I remember that quite well.
There was a lot of pushback regarding those who were already there, those who get to be here. But a lot of people were like, well, where's the money going to go if it's a rideshare company versus the fact that it might make ride sharing cheaper for those who want to do it and not just rely on the cab companies. Yeah. And obviously there's a conversation regarding putting money back into public transit and making that more affordable. There's got to be something that our local decision makers can kind of do to help make not just making decisions easier, but maybe the direction of the city. Maybe, does that make sense? Is that very optimistic? I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a dreamer.
You know, one of the things over the years as a city councillor, I always felt the internal thinking was that we were kind of an island unto ourselves.
The city, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And why I say that is, you know, we're impacted by all these external issues that are going on around us. I don't care who you are, you're impacted one way or the other. You know, inflationary costs of food, but we've got no control over that.
That's fair.
You know, the gas tax we watched that, you know, was removed really had a tremendous impact on the overall city, I believe, last winter. That was can you imagine if we had the gas tax on right now and it was on, you know, propane and heating products?
Cold week for that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, all these things play out, and we're not immune to them. They all impact us, and you know, that's what bothers me at times is that, and I'm sure other councillors feel this way, that we can somehow change what's going on here.
You can't change external global factors.
No,
that doesn't seem fair. But
what we can do is that we can explain our story to upper levels of government and try to get them to understand the difficulties.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think, you know, I don't like the external pressures that are going on, but I'm going to tell you that I'm hearing a lot of major positive things that could happen here in the next couple of years.
Can you clarify?
I don't want to. I'm not going to go. But I'll
Can you immediately allude to what you're referring to?
I'll give you a little bit of a lead here.
Okay, yeah, feel free.
In it.
There's a lot going on in the world.
Yeah, I mean, you know, from a federal standpoint, you know, I think about North Bay years and years ago when the airport was active. Why was it active?
There's a couple different reasons, but I mean...
Defense.
Yeah.
What's happening right now? A lot of defense spending is coming.
Yeah.
So hang on.
Ooh, ominous. But yeah, I mean, let's talk about this briefly. There's so much going on at that level. And, you know, when we talked about the federal election this past May, which feels like a lifetime ago, Ben, a lot has changed in general, right, Mark? Like a lot of sentiment towards what it is to be Canadian, the cost of living globally compared to being in Canada. And it's hard to get things perfect. I don't think anyone truly can. But I will say because we're recording this on what day is today? Friday afternoon, Mark. Welcome to the studio. I know, we got to get out of here soon. The 23rd, a very, very cold day and a very, very cold weekend. But we just had, this is more of like a global kind of conversation, which we'll have Tabashnik in to talk to about. You know, we saw Mark Carney give the big speech, right? Which I felt like it had ripples across the world. Very interesting stuff. But you're right. There's so many different external factors that, you know, when I talk with Dr. Tabashnik or others, you know, yourself included, like how can we as, you know, locals in North Bay decipher and understand how those things impact us here, even if it feels like, oh, it's like a whole ocean away, or it's like it's in Europe, but like it's not quite that far. It impacts us more closely than you think, because whether it is, you know, whether it's international trade, tariffs upon us, you know, the flow movement of people, tourism is a big one. There's so many things that you can't really put into your palm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, back to your question again, I think it's important for people that actually watch this. You know, the city council has worked hard. This has been
You've had a hell of a year.
Holy mackerel! I'm telling you, this has been busy, and you know, it impacts your family life, and we do have people that on council that do have families, young families, and that's concerning because it's impactful on them. And they've really, I've really appreciated the council, even though, there are those people out there that don't necessarily think it's been that good a council. There's been a lot of hard work done. And, we've had crises, but we've gotten by them. And I've looked forward to what's transpired over this last term.
I mean, 2026 is a big year, Mark. You don't have to say anything here, but we do know that at the end of, near the end of the year, in the fall, in October, there will be an election. And I'm sure we'll talk to you up until that point in some capacity. But before we get you out of here, is there anything you kind of wanted to say to our listeners or our viewers regarding, the last year of North Bay, 'cause it's been a while since we had you in, or anything we talked about here today regarding housing or homelessness?
No, not really, other than, I enjoy the position I'm in at this point, and I intend to finish the term out in that position. I hope, because we do have an election coming up later on this month, and I hope to remain there. I think that'll probably happen just to keep it cohesive.
Right.
I can tell you without doubt I will be running again in the next election.
Heard it here first.
Without question. And I'll leave it at that.
Okay. Well, then we'll talk to you come time.
Yeah.
Mark, thanks again for joining us. Always a pleasure. And we'll catch you next time.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening or watching the Echo Essentials podcast. My name, as always, is Chris Pekarski. Let us know what you think about the episode or the issue at hand. Feel free to share, drop a like, subscribe to our Echo Essentials newsletter to get all the information, articles, and reporting happening about this topic and others around our city. Thanks so much.